The stars looked cold and empty as Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Vengeance. His ship moved slowly through the dark space around the dead planet below. The world had no name in their records. It was just another rock floating in the void, covered in old scars and twisted metal. "Commander, we're picking up something strange down there," said Dr. Lisa Grant from her station. She was the ship's expert on old alien ruins. Her fingers moved quickly over the control panel as she studied the readings. "There are structures buried under the surface. They look very old." Jake walked over to look at her screen. The planet below was gray and lifeless. Nothing had lived there for a very long time. But the scanners showed something hidden beneath layers of rock and dust. Strange shapes that looked like they might have been buildings once. "How old?" Jake asked. Lisa checked her readings again. "Maybe 3,000 years, could be older." She looked up at him with excited eyes. "Commander, I think we found something important." Jake nodded. Finding old ruins was why they were out here in the first place. The human colonies needed to know more about the aliens who lived in this part of space long ago. Maybe they could learn something useful. "Take us down," Jake told his pilot, Captain Amy Rodriguez. "Find a safe place to land." Amy's hands moved over the controls. "Yes, sir. Landing site looks clear. No signs of life or danger." The ship dropped through the thin atmosphere toward the dead world's surface. Jake could see the planet getting bigger. In the view screen, ancient blast craters covered the ground like ugly wounds. Whatever had happened here, it had been violent. They landed near what looked like the biggest group of buried structures. Jake gathered his team. Besides Lisa and Amy, he brought Lieutenant Ben Carter for security and 3 other crew members. They put on their environment suits and stepped out onto the planet's dusty surface. The air was thin and cold. Their boots crunched on the rocky ground as they walked toward the buried ruins. Lisa carried her scanning equipment while Ben kept watch for any danger. "There," Lisa pointed to a spot where twisted metal stuck up from the ground. "The scanner says there's a big chamber right underneath us. We need to dig down about 10 feet. They used their portable digging tools to cut through the rock and dirt. After 2 hours of work, they found a smooth metal wall. Lisa ran her scanner over it and found what looked like a door. "Stand back," Ben said, raising his weapon. "You never knew what might be inside old alien ruins." Lisa pressed her hand against a glowing panel next to the door. Nothing happened for a moment. Then the door slid open with a soft hiss of escaping air. Inside was a large room filled with strange machines. Most of them were broken and covered in dust. But in the center of the room stood something that made them all stop and stare. It was a tall crystal about as high as a person, glowing with soft blue light. Strange symbols moved inside it like living things. Lisa walked closer, her scanner beeping faster and faster. "Commander," she whispered. "This is some kind of data storage device. It's still active after all these years." Jake felt something cold in his stomach. "Can you access it?" Lisa nodded and connected her equipment to the crystal. Her fingers moved over the controls as she tried to unlock whatever was stored inside. The crystal pulsed brighter, and suddenly the air above it shimmered. A hologram appeared. It showed a beautiful blue and green planet covered in white clouds. Jake had never seen anything so lovely. Cities of light covered the continents, and ships moved between the planet and several moons. "What world is that?" Amy asked in wonder. Lisa checked her readings. Her face went very pale. "According to the data signature, that's Earth." Everyone went quiet. Earth was just a legend to them. Their grandparents had told stories about the beautiful world where humans first lived. But it was supposed to be lost somewhere in space, too far away to ever find. The hologram changed. Now it showed dark ships approaching the blue planet. They were sleek and deadly looking, with weapons that glowed red. Jake counted hundreds of them, maybe thousands. "Who are they?" Ben asked. Lisa worked at her controls, trying to get more information from the crystal. The records call them the Zephyrian Empire. 3 different alien species working together. The hologram showed what happened next. The alien ships began firing at Earth. Bright beams of energy struck the planet's surface. Cities disappeared in flashes of light. The blue oceans began to boil. The white clouds turned black with smoke. Jake watched in horror as Earth died. The beautiful world became a burning ball of rock and fire. Millions of tiny ships fled from the dying planet, carrying survivors into space. But most of them were destroyed by the alien weapons. "How long ago?" Jake asked in a quiet voice. Lisa's hand shook as she read the data. 3,000 years ago, almost exactly. The hologram changed again. It showed this dead world when it was still alive. There had been cities here too, and people, human people. The same alien ships had come here and burned this world just like they burned Earth. "They hunted us," Amy said. "They didn't just destroy Earth. They followed the survivors and killed them too." Ben's hand moved to his weapon. "Are they still out there?" Lisa worked with the crystal for several more minutes, pulling out more information. "According to this, the Zephyrian Empire still exists. They control dozens of star systems. They think they killed all the humans." Jake stared at the hologram, showing Earth's destruction. His people, his real people, had come from that beautiful world, and these aliens had murdered billions of them. They had tried to wipe out humanity completely. "But they didn't kill all of us," he said slowly. "Some of the colony ships got away. We're proof of that." Lisa nodded. "The records show at least 30 ships escaped. They scattered in different directions, trying to get as far from the Zephyrians as possible." Jake felt something growing inside him. It was hot and angry, and had been waiting for 3,000 years. Around him, his crew, had the same look on their faces. They had just learned that their species had been the victims of genocide. Their real home had been murdered. "Commander," Amy said in a hard voice, "what are your orders?" Jake looked at the hologram one more time. Earth burned in the blue light, beautiful and dead. Somewhere out in space, the aliens who had done this were still alive, still thinking they had won. "We go home," Jake said. "We tell the colonies what we found, and then we decide what to do about it." But in his heart, he already knew what they would do. The Zephyrians had tried to erase humanity from the universe. Now it was time to return the favor. The message went out to every human colony in the galaxy. Jake Morrison sat in his captain's chair and watched the communication officer send the encrypted signal to dozens of hidden worlds. Each colony would receive the same information. Earth was real. Earth was destroyed, and the killers were still alive. "Signal sent to all colonies, Commander," said the communication officer. "We should start getting replies in a few hours." Jake nodded. The colonies were spread across thousands of light years. Some were on planets, others on space stations built inside asteroids. All of them had been hiding for generations, keeping quiet so the aliens would never find them. Captain Amy Rodriguez walked onto the bridge carrying a data pad. "I've been studying the information from that crystal. The Zephyrian Empire is huge. They control over 40 star systems. Their main fleet has thousands of ships." "How many people do we have?" Jake asked. Amy checked her numbers. "All the human colonies together have maybe 50 million people total. The Zephyrians have billions." Lieutenant Ben Carter looked up from his weapon station. "Doesn't matter how many they have if they don't see us coming." That was the key, Jake thought. The Zephyrians believed all humans were dead. They had stopped looking for survivors centuries ago. That gave humanity a big advantage. The first reply came from New Haven Colony, built inside a hollowed-out asteroid, near the edge of known space. Colony leader Mark Davis appeared on the main screen. He was an older man with gray hair and angry eyes. "Commander Morrison," Davis said, "we received your message. Our historians have been studying our old records. We found references to Earth, but we thought they were just stories. You're telling us it was all real?" "Every word," Jake replied. "We have the proof. The aliens who destroyed our homeworld are called the Zephyrian Empire. They're still out there." Davis was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was hard. "What do you plan to do about it?" "That depends on what resources we have. What can your colony contribute?" Davis smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. "Commander, for the past 500 years, New Haven has been building warships. We told ourselves it was for defense against pirates. But I think we always knew this day would come. We have 30 combat vessels ready to fight. More messages came in from other colonies. Freedom Station had built advanced stealth technology that could hide entire fleets. The miners on Kepler 438c had developed new types of weapons that could crack planets open. Colony after colony reported they were ready for war. Dr. Lisa Grant studied the tactical data as it came in. Jake, look at this. Every human colony has been preparing for battle. It's like they all knew we would need to fight someday. Jake understood. Even after 3,000 years, humans remembered what had been done to them. The memory of Earth's destruction had been passed down through generations. It lived in their genes, in their dreams, in their anger. How long before we can gather a fleet? Jake asked Amy. 2 months, maybe 3. The colonies need time to prepare their ships and crews. But Commander, we're not just talking about a few dozen ships. If everyone contributes what they promised, we'll have over 300 warships. Ben Carter pulled up star charts on his screen. We need to pick our targets carefully, hit them fast and hard, then disappear before they can respond. Make them afraid. Lisa had been studying the Zephyrian data from the crystal. Their empire has 3 main species working together. The Zephyrians themselves are the leaders. They look like big lizards with scales and claws. Then there are the Kethri, who are good with technology, and the Vorthan, who handle most of their military. What's their weakest point? Jake asked. Lisa pointed to a star chart. Industrial worlds. They have 5 major manufacturing planets that build most of their ships and weapons. If we destroy those, it will take them years to rebuild. Jake studied the chart. The industrial worlds were spread across Zephyrian space, each one heavily defended. But they were also far from the main military bases. If human ships could get close without being detected, they could do serious damage. Which one first? Amy asked. Ben highlighted one of the worlds. Zarian Prime. It's the biggest manufacturing center, but it's also the most isolated. Only 2 patrol ships guard the system. If we hit it with everything we have, we can destroy it before help arrives. Jake felt that cold anger growing stronger in his chest. For 3,000 years, the Zephyrians had lived in peace while humans hid in the dark between stars. They had forgotten about the genocide they committed. It was time to remind them. Send another message to all colonies, Jake ordered. Tell them we're going to war. Have them send their best ships and crews to these coordinates in 2 months. We're going to hit Zarian Prime first. The communication officer sent the message. Within hours, replies started coming back. Every human colony agreed to join the fight. Some sent messages of support. Others sent detailed plans for new weapons. All of them sent the same promise. They would be ready. Dr. Grant worked day and night studying Zephyrian technology. She learned how their weapons worked, how their ships were built, how their cities were powered. Most importantly, she learned how to turn their own technology against them. Jake, I found something interesting, she said one day. The Zephyrians use plasma weapons, just like the ones that destroyed Earth. But I think I can modify our weapons to use the same energy type. We can burn their worlds the same way they burned ours. Jake looked at the weapon designs on her screen. They were powerful enough to turn entire cities into ash. How long to build them? If every colony works together, maybe 6 weeks, we'll have enough firepower to glass a planet. Amy came over to look at the designs. Is that what we want? To become like them? Jake thought about the hologram of Earth dying. He thought about the billions of humans who never got to see the stars again. He thought about 3,000 years of hiding and running and being afraid. They started this war, he said quietly. We're going to finish it. The colonies worked, faster than anyone expected. Ships arrived at the meeting point early, loaded with new weapons and eager crews. Jake stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched the human fleet grow larger every day. Captain Rodriguez handed him the final count. 312 ships, Commander. Every colony sent their best. We're ready. Jake looked out at the fleet surrounding his ship. Every vessel carried the children of Earth, the survivors of genocide, the inheritors of a 3,000-year-old debt. They had hidden long enough. Now it was time to collect what was owed. Set course for Zerion. Prime, Jake ordered. It's time to begin. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Zerion system. 300 ships appeared in the darkness of space, but the Zephyrians could not see them. Human stealth technology kept the fleet hidden like ghosts in the night. Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his flagship and looked at the planet ahead. Zerion Prime was covered in lights. Massive factories stretched across 3 continents, building weapons and ships for the Zephyrian Empire. Millions of aliens lived and worked on the surface, unaware that death was coming for them. "All ships report ready, Commander," said Captain Amy Rodriguez. "The stealth fields are holding. They don't know we're here." Jake checked the tactical display. 2 Zephyrian patrol ships orbited the planet, but they were old and slow. The real defenses were on the surface: energy shields, missile batteries, and fighter squadrons. It looked impressive, but Jake knew it wouldn't be enough. "Dr. Grant, are the new weapons ready?" Jake asked. Lisa Grant looked up from her station. Her modified plasma cannons had been installed on every ship in the fleet. They used the same technology that had burned Earth, but humanity had made them stronger and hotter. "All weapon systems are online," Lisa said. "The plasma charges are at full power. Commander, these weapons will burn everything they touch." Lieutenant Ben Carter studied the planet's defenses. "I count 48 shield generators protecting the main industrial centers. If we take those out first, the factories will be defenseless." Jake nodded. The plan was simple. Half the fleet would target the shields and defensive systems. The other half would hit the factories and cities. It would be fast and complete. "Signal all ships," Jake ordered. "Attack begins in 30 seconds. No survivors, no mercy. Make them pay for Earth." The human fleet moved closer to the planet. Still invisible, still silent. The Zephyrians went about their daily lives, working in their factories, living in their cities, never knowing that their victims had returned. 10 seconds, Amy announced. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, fire. Space erupted in light and fury. 300 human ships dropped their stealth fields and unleashed everything they had. Plasma beams crossed the darkness like spears of fire, striking Zerion Prime's shields and defenses. The first thing to die was the orbital defense station. A massive structure that had protected the planet for centuries vanished in a ball of white fire. The 2 patrol ships tried to send a warning, but human jammers blocked all communications. They died seconds later, torn apart by focused plasma fire. On the planet's surface, the shield generators exploded one after another. Each one created a mushroom cloud of fire and smoke that could be seen from orbit. Without the shields, the factories and cities were naked and helpless. Surface. "Defenses are down," Ben reported. "All primary targets are exposed." Jake felt no joy, only cold satisfaction. "Begin planetary bombardment. Burn it all." The real attack began. Hundreds of plasma beams rained down from space, striking every industrial complex on the planet. Factories that had built weapons for 1,000 years became infernos in seconds. The heat was so intense that metal melted and stone turned to glass. In the city of Korthvar, 1 million Zephyrians lived and worked. They were tall, lizard-like creatures, with green scales and yellow eyes. They had never seen a human, never even heard that humans existed. To them, humans were just an old myth that their grandparents barely remembered. The plasma beams struck Korthvar at exactly noon local time. The city center vanished in the first second. The outer districts lasted almost 10 seconds before they, too, became fire and ash. 1 million voices screamed once, then fell silent forever. Jake watched the city burn on his view screen. These creatures had helped destroy Earth. Their ancestors had murdered billions of his people. Now they were paying the price. "Target the mining complexes next," Jake ordered. "Don't leave anything standing." Captain Rodriguez coordinated the bombardment from her station. "Gamma Squadron, hit the northern mining facilities. Delta Squadron, take the southern complexes. I want everything reduced to slag." The attack continued for 2 hours. Every factory, every mine, every military base on Zerion Prime was targeted and destroyed. The planet's surface became a landscape of fire and molten rock. Cities that had stood for thousands of years were reduced to glowing craters. Marine Sergeant Tony Phillips watched the destruction from the troop transport bay. His soldiers were ready to land and finish any survivors. But there were no survivors. The plasma weapons had been too thorough, too hot. Nothing could live in that fire. "Sir," Tony said over the radio, "should we deploy ground forces?" Jake looked at the burning planet below. There was nothing left to fight. The industrial heart of the Zephyrian Empire was dead. "Negative, Sergeant. There's no one left down there." Dr. Grant monitored the planet's energy readings. The massive industrial complexes had produced enough power to light a small star. Now all that energy was being released at once as the fusion. Reactors overloaded and exploded. "Commander," Lisa said quietly, "the planetary fusion grid is collapsing. We need to pull back or the shockwave will damage our ships." Jake gave the order to retreat to a safe distance. The human fleet moved away from Zerion Prime just as the planet's core began to destabilize. The explosions on the surface had triggered something deep underground. "All ships, this is Morrison," Jake announced over the fleet communications. "Phase 1 is complete. Zerion Prime is destroyed. The Zephyrian Empire has lost its primary weapons manufacturing center." Cheers echoed through the fleet. After 3,000 years of hiding, humanity had struck back. The aliens who had burned Earth were finally tasting fire themselves. Amy pulled up intelligence reports on her screen. "Commander, we're picking up emergency transmissions from other Zephyrian worlds. They know something happened here, but they don't know what. Our jamming worked perfectly." That was important. If the Zephyrians didn't know who had attacked them, they couldn't prepare proper defenses. The next target would be just as surprised as Zerion Prime had been. Ben studied the tactical situation. "Sir, we have enough fuel and ammunition for 2 more attacks like this one. Where do we hit next?" Jake looked at the burning planet one last time. Zerion Prime had been the industrial heart of the Zephyrian Empire. Now it was a dead rock covered in ash and fire. The aliens would need decades to rebuild what they had lost here. "Set course for the Demios system," Jake ordered. "Their agricultural center is next. We're going to starve them while they burn." Dr. Grant prepared her weapons for the next attack. The modified plasma cannons had worked perfectly. They burned hotter and spread faster than anything the Zephyrians had ever seen. Earth's fire had come home to roost. As the human fleet jumped to faster-than-light speed, Jake thought about the crystal they had found on that dead world. It had shown him Earth's destruction, the murder of his people, the genocide that had scattered humanity across the stars. Now the Zephyrians would learn what humans had learned 3,000 years ago. They would discover what it meant to watch their worlds burn. They would understand the price of trying to erase an entire species. The hunt had only just begun. News of Zerion Prime's destruction spread like wildfire through the Zephyrian Empire. On the capital world of Zephyr, Supreme Overlord Vexthar called an emergency meeting of the High Council. The massive reptilian leader slammed his clawed fist on the crystal table as holographic reports filled the air around him. "Impossible," Vexthar roared. "Zerion Prime had the best defenses in the Empire. Nothing could destroy it so completely." War Commander Thexkar, head of the military, studied the battle reports with his yellow eyes. "My lord, our patrol ship sent no distress signal. The planetary shields failed in minutes. Whoever did this used weapons we have never seen before." The other council members whispered among themselves. The Kethri technology minister, a thin blue-skinned alien with 6 arms, brought up tactical displays. "The energy signatures are strange. These plasma weapons burn much hotter than ours. The attackers also used advanced stealth technology." "Who could have such weapons?" asked the Vorthan defense minister. He was a massive creature covered in thick armor plates. "We know. Every military force in this part of the galaxy." Vexthar's eyes narrowed. Deep in his ancient memory, something stirred. A half-forgotten name from the old wars. But that was impossible. They had made sure of that 3,000 years ago. Meanwhile, the human fleet had already reached its next target. Admiral Marcus Stone now commanded the main battle group while Jake Morrison coordinated the overall campaign. They hung in space above Demios, the agricultural world that fed half the Zephyrian Empire. "Surface scans complete," reported Dr. Susan Blake, who had joined Dr. Grant's science team. Demios has massive farming complexes covering 4 continents. They grow enough food to feed 2 billion Zephyrians. Jake looked at the peaceful world below. Green fields stretched to the horizon. Huge atmospheric processors turned the air into the perfect mixture for growing crops. Cities full of farmers, and workers dotted the landscape. "How long until they starve without this world?" Jake asked. Dr. Grant checked her calculations. "The Empire imports 70% of its food from Demios. Without it, they'll have serious shortages within 6 months, famine within a year. Admiral," Stone pulled up the fleet deployment. "We have 200 ships ready for attack. The other 100 are refueling at the rally point. Demios only has basic defenses. This should be easier than Zerion Prime." Jake nodded. "Begin the attack." "Same. Pattern as before. Hit the defenses first, then burn everything else." The human fleet dropped its stealth fields and opened fire. Demios had been a peaceful world for centuries. Its defenses were old and weak, designed to stop pirates, not a full military assault. The orbital stations died in the first volley. On the surface, Zephyrian farmers looked up in terror as fire rained from the sky. Most had never seen combat. They ran screaming as their fields began to burn, but there was nowhere to hide from the plasma beams that turned everything to ash. Colonel Rick Hayes led the ground assault teams. His Marines landed in the burning ruins of the capital city to plant something special. It was a memorial beacon containing the names of every human who had died when Earth burned. The message was broadcast on all Zephyrian frequencies. "This is for Earth," Rick's voice echoed across the burning world. "This is for every human child who never grew up, every parent who never came home, every life you stole from us. We remember them all." The attack on Demios took only 4 hours. When it was over, the agricultural world was a smoking wasteland. The atmospheric processors had been turned into weapons, creating planet-wide firestorms that would burn for weeks. Nothing would grow on Demios for decades. Back on Zephyr, the reports kept getting worse. War Commander Thexkar stood before the High Council with news that made their blood run cold. "My lords, we have lost contact with the Corinth mining system. Long-range sensors show massive explosions. The asteroid mining facilities appear to be completely destroyed." Supreme Overlord Vexithar felt fear creeping into his ancient heart. "How many attacks is that now?" 7 worlds in 2 weeks, my lord. Industrial centers, agricultural worlds, mining systems. Whoever is doing this knows exactly where to hit us to cause maximum damage." The Kethri minister brought up tactical displays showing the pattern of attacks. "They are not random. Each target weakens our ability to fight back. First they destroyed our weapons factories, then our food supply, now our raw materials. This is a coordinated campaign." "But who?" demanded Vexthar. "What enemy could field such a large fleet without us knowing?" Old General Kethval, the oldest member of the council, spoke in a whisper that made everyone lean forward. "My lord, I have studied the old records. The weapon signatures, the tactics, the complete destruction. This reminds me of something from the ancient wars." "What are you talking about, old fool?" Vexthar snapped. "The humans, my lord. This is how the humans fought in the old days, before we cleansed them from the galaxy." The council chamber fell, silent. The word human had not been spoken in official meetings for over 1,000 years. They were extinct, wiped out completely during the Great Cleansing. "Impossible," Vexthar said, but his voice shook. "We destroyed their homeworld. We hunted down every colony ship. We made sure none survived." General Kethval pulled up ancient battle records. "Perhaps we were not as thorough as we believed. The humans were clever. Some may have escaped to the far reaches of space and hidden there, growing strong." War Commander Thexakar studied the old human tactics. The similarities were undeniable. "If humans have returned, we are in serious trouble. They were the most dangerous enemy we ever faced. That is why we decided to exterminate them completely." Meanwhile, Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched another Zephyrian world die. This time it was Vorthkala, a major shipbuilding center. The orbital construction yards that had built warships for centuries were now twisted, metal and fire. That makes 8 worlds, Commander, Amy Rodriguez reported. Our intelligence says the Zephyrian military is starting to panic. They're pulling ships back to defend their core worlds. Dr. Grant analyzed the latest intelligence reports. They're beginning to figure out who we are. Intercepted communications. Mention humans several times, they're scared. Jake felt satisfaction but also impatience. 8 worlds were just the beginning. The Zephyrian Empire controlled over 40 star systems. They had murdered billions of humans. 8 worlds was not nearly enough payment for that debt. How many ships do we have left in fighting condition? Jake asked. Admiral Stone checked the fleet status. About 250. We've lost some to battle damage, but the enemy has barely touched us. Their defenses can't handle our stealth technology and superior weapons. Ben Carter highlighted the next targets on the tactical display. I recommend we hit their military academies next. If we kill their officers in training, it will cripple their ability to fight back for decades. Jake looked at the star chart, showing Zephyrian space. So many worlds, so many aliens who had benefited from Earth's destruction. They had lived in peace and prosperity, while humans hid in the darkness between stars. No, Jake said quietly. It's time to send them a message they'll never forget. Set course for their home world. It's time to knock on Vexthar's front door. The human fleet turned toward the heart of the Zephyrian Empire. Behind them, 8 worlds burned in the darkness. Ahead lay the final confrontation that had been 3,000 years in the making. On Zephyr, Supreme Overlord Vexthar stared at the tactical display showing human fleet movements. They were coming for him, just as his ancestors had gone for Earth. The circle was closing, and he finally understood what his people had awakened when they tried to commit genocide. The humans had returned, and they were bringing hell with them. The human fleet arrived at the edge of the Zephyr system like death itself. 230 ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. At their head was Admiral Jake Morrison's flagship, now renamed Earth's Vengeance. Before them lay the Zephyrian homeworld, a massive planet covered in golden cities and crystal spires. This was where the order to destroy Earth had been given 3,000 years ago. This was where the genocide had been planned and celebrated. Surface population 4 billion, reported Dr. Lisa Grant from her station. It's the most heavily defended world in their empire. 300 orbital defense platforms, 2,000 fighter ships, and a planetary shield that could stop a meteor impact. Jake stared at the beautiful world that had spawned his people's killers. It won't be enough. Supreme Overlord Vexthar stood in his war room deep beneath the planet's surface. Around him, his generals and admirals argued about defense strategies. But Vexthar knew the truth. The humans had destroyed 8 major worlds without losing a single ship. No defense would stop them now. My lord, War Commander Thexkar said urgently, the human fleet has arrived. Our sensors count over 200 ships. They're using stealth technology we cannot penetrate. The old Supreme Overlord closed his yellow eyes. In his long life, he had conquered dozens of worlds. He had enslaved entire species. But he had never faced an enemy driven by 3,000 years of hate. Open a communication channel, Vexthar ordered. Let me speak to their leader. On the bridge of Earth's Vengeance, Communication Officer Kelly Barnes looked up in surprise. Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the planetary surface. It's the Zephyrian Supreme Overlord himself. Jake almost refused to answer, but curiosity won. Put him on screen. The massive reptilian form of Vexthar appeared on the main view screen. He was old and scarred, with scales that had turned gray with age, but his eyes still burned with the intelligence that had built an empire. So, Vexthar said in a deep, rumbling voice, the humans have returned from extinction. I confess I am impressed. We believed we had killed you all. Jake felt cold rage building in his chest. You tried. You murdered our homeworld and hunted down our survivors. But some of us escaped to the darkness between stars. We've been waiting. 3,000 years is a long time to hold a grudge, Vexthar said. Perhaps we can negotiate. The Empire has great wealth. We could offer compensation for past wrongs. Jake laughed, but there was no humor in it. Compensation? You turned Earth into a ball of fire. You tried to erase humanity from existence. What compensation could possibly be enough for genocide? Vexthar's scales darkened with fear. Then what do you want? Justice, Jake said simply. The same justice you gave Earth. Before Vexthar could respond, Jake cut the transmission. He turned to his crew, who were watching with grim satisfaction. All ships, this is Admiral Morrison, Jake announced over the fleet communications. Today we finish what they started 3,000 years ago. Today we collect the debt they owe for Earth. Prepare for planetary assault. Captain Amy Rodriguez coordinated the attack from her station. All fleet commanders report ready. Weapons. Charged, fighters launched. Admiral, we're ready to burn their world. But Jake hesitated for a moment. On his desk was a small crystal data core, the same one they had found on that dead world so long ago. It contained the last messages from Earth, final words from parents to children, lovers to beloved, the dying words of a murdered world. Dr. Grant noticed his pause. Jake, are you all right? Jake picked up the crystal and held it toward the view screen showing Zephyr. I'm thinking about all the people who never got to see this day. My great-grandmother used to tell stories about Earth's blue skies and green forests. She died believing her people would never have justice. Lieutenant Ben Carter checked his weapons display. Admiral, the longer we wait, the more time they have to prepare their defenses. Jake nodded and placed the crystal back on his desk. You're right. Begin the attack. Show them what humans learned in the darkness. The battle for Zephyr began with a storm of light. Human ships dropped their stealth fields and unleashed 3,000 years of accumulated rage. The orbital defense, platforms, mighty structures that had protected the homeworld for millennia, vanished in seconds under the concentrated plasma fire. The Zephyrian fleet tried to respond, but their ships were no match for human technology. Admiral Stone led a squadron of fast attack ships that tore through the enemy formations like wolves among sheep. Fighter after fighter exploded in brilliant flashes of light. On the planet's surface, millions of Zephyrians looked up in terror as their perfect sky filled with fire. They had been the masters of the galaxy for so long that they had forgotten what it felt like to be prey. Now they remembered. Planetary shields are down, Amy reported. Surface defenses are destroyed. The planet is defenseless. Jake stood and walked to the front of the bridge, looking down at the world that had ordered Earth's destruction. Dr. Grant, are you ready? Lisa Grant checked her modified atmospheric processors one last time. The humans had learned from studying Zephyrian technology. They knew how to turn a planet's own air against it, how to create firestorms that would burn everything on the surface. Atmospheric conversion weapons are ready, Lisa said quietly. Jake, once we start this, there's no stopping it. The entire planet will burn. Jake thought about the hologram of Earth dying, about the beautiful blue world that had been turned to ash and fire. He thought about the colony ships fleeing into space, carrying the last remnants of humanity. He thought about 3,000 years of hiding and running and being afraid. For Earth, Jake said. Fire. The atmospheric processors struck Zephyr's upper atmosphere and began their deadly work. The planet's own air became fuel for a fire that spread across every continent. Cities that had stood for 10,000 years became infernos in minutes. Supreme Overlord Vexthar felt the ground shake as fire came down from the sky. His war room, buried deep underground, was supposed to be safe. But the heat was so intense that even the bedrock began to crack. My lord, Vexthar gasped as smoke filled the bunker. The surface temperature is rising past the survival threshold. We have maybe an hour before even the deepest shelters fail. Vexthar laughed bitterly. His empire was dying around him, consumed by the same fire his ancestors had used on Earth. The humans have learned our lessons well. They are better students than we ever imagined. On Earth's vengeance, Jake watched Zephyr burn. The golden cities became pillars of flame. The crystal spires melted like ice in summer. 4 billion Zephyrians died as their homeworld became a funeral pyre. All enemy ships destroyed, Ben reported. Planetary defense grid is down. Surface fires are spreading across all continents. Dr. Grant monitored the atmospheric readings. The firestorm is self-sustaining now. It will burn for days. Nothing on the surface will survive. Jake felt no joy, only a deep satisfaction that had been waiting 3 millennia to arrive. The debt was paid, Earth was avenged, the Zephyrian Empire was ending the same way it had ended humanity's first home. Captain Rodriguez brought him the final reports. Admiral, we're receiving surrender signals from the remaining Zephyrian worlds. Without their homeworld and leadership, the Empire is collapsing. It's over. Jake looked out at the burning planet one last time. Somewhere in that fire was Supreme, Overlord Vexthar, learning what his victims had learned long ago, learning what it meant to watch your world die. Set course for Earth, Jake ordered. It's time to go home. The human fleet turned away from the dying Zephyrian homeworld and began the long journey back to humanity's birthplace. Behind them, Zephyr burned in the darkness, a funeral pyre for an empire that had tried to commit genocide and paid the ultimate price. In the cargo hold of Earth's vengeance, engineers worked on terraforming equipment that would restore Earth's atmosphere and oceans. The blue world would live again. Humanity's long exile was finally over. Jake sat in his ready room and opened the crystal data core one last time. The final message from Earth played in the air before him, a mother's voice singing a lullaby to children who would never grow up. "Sleep now, little ones," the voice whispered. "Dream of stars and ships and better days to come." Jake smiled and closed the crystal. The better days had finally arrived.